Cool. So I'm happy to have you here, Parna. And I think maybe you can get started by telling us how did you get into RevOps?
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting story. After I graduated college, I was administrative assistant, secretary, but I had a knack for analytics. So I kind of did a lot of analytics projects from that eagle's eye view of like kind of administrating everything. So when I got pretty well versed in analytics, did some financial modeling, did some bookkeeping, I started doing corporate analytics for Penguin Group. That was like my first, I don't know, analytics job. And I was in the corporate operations group doing sales analysis and inventory planning, kind of estimations, trending analysis, things like that. And that was super exciting because I got to like see how to move physical inventory. But I really wanted to get into tech after that. So I worked at Medidata Solutions, which was a biotech company. I worked there for quite some time, and it was a pretty big established revenue operations program. So they had a pretty big proposals team. They had a lot of sales ops admins, and I was in charge of sales analytics. And our sales analytics group was 3 people, and we grew rapidly over the time that I was there. I did sales analytics for over 300 reps, and really understood how a well-oiled machine and the best functioning sales operations group is structured. From there, I wanted to work at startups. So I've been at various startups for the last 5 years, 5 to 6 years, basically setting up their revenue operations programs from scratch. And that's been in many different industries. Education technology, cybersecurity, no-code application development, marketing technology. And recently, I just started at Dscout, which is a market research tech firm. And I'm super excited to be there, kind of up-leveling and consolidating some of their sales operations practices.
Sounds like an exciting career. So you've many times started revenue operations from scratch, and you're about to do it again right now. So what are the first steps in terms of data quality that you're always starting with when establishing a revenue operations organization?
Yeah, so there's a few kind of audit type checks that I do. The first is, looking at the sales playbook, if there is one. If there isn't, then interviewing the stakeholders and writing it down. Then from there, looking in the system to see if the things that need to be tracked in the sales process are actually tracked in the CRM. So if you have a MEDDIC methodology, for instance, are you really multi-threading your opportunities and bringing different stakeholders into the deal at the appropriate timing? If so, those contact roles should be added to the ops, and all of your meetings and activities should be logged. That can kind of give you some insight into opportunity health scores. Is there, activity on the meeting that supports the deal closing in the appropriate time frame that you've listed on your close date? So that's an audit that I do. I also try to see if the standard SaaS KPI metrics are being reported and tracked in terms of pacing against goals at any point in the quarter. So definitely taking a look at like what exists in the reporting suite and making sure that it's aligned with industry best practices.
And when you're coming to a new organization, probably the first thing you're looking at is your CRM. And can you tell me maybe what are the most urgent CRM challenges you're always facing?
Yeah, so data hygiene and sales process are 2 things that I see. Like, are we really tracking the accurate information in the system? Because without that, you can't really do any analytics or reporting, and you can't get more consultative and more leading indicators to triage issues before they happen. So that's definitely something that I assess. Dscout luckily is pretty mature in that vein. So they have a really well documented sales process. They have a lot of metrics in Salesforce and it's being tracked appropriately. And yeah, definitely having the automation there helps. So yeah.
And automation is one part of it, but also a lot of the important data in the CRM comes from reps and data entry protocols. So can you elaborate maybe on some of your data entry protocols you're trying to enforce?
Yeah, so in terms of data hygiene, like every opportunity needs to have the appropriate close date, the appropriate contacts listed so that you can get marketing attribution in the appropriate lead source tagged. You definitely want to see the right stage that's associated with probability, which should be assessed based on historical conversion rates. You want next steps listed in a timely manner. And, you want to like overall, you want to see that you have the pipeline coverage that you need to hit your goal. So that means the amount has to be accurate and listed out appropriately. If there's a CPQ in place, making sure that once a proposal is sent out, that's tracked and logged in the system. You want to start doing some trend analysis on what happens to quotes over time. So if you send out a quote, what does it mean if you send out a second quote, like what changed? So kind of looking at the metrics, making sure that they're tagged properly, and definitely putting in validation rules in the systems so that you can prevent errors. And then I also put together data hygiene reports to flag common mistakes, like, okay, the next steps haven't been updated in a week, or you don't have the appropriate sales stage given the close date. So if it's early stage, it's probably not going to close on Friday, for instance.
And where do you see reps struggling with CRM tasks?
Definitely adding contact roles to deals. That can be very tedious. And then maintaining that contact information. So phone number, email, because when you're handing off to account management, you want to make sure that the relevant stakeholders at the client are still listed, both for billing purposes and for onboarding purposes. You want all of the discovery that you did through the sales process to be appropriately tagged. And yeah, those are some of the things that I look at.
And how do you incentivize reps to follow through your CRM data protocols?
Yeah, so so validation rules is definitely something that I use. So the system won't permit the person to enter the wrong data. Another thing is creating reporting to flag issues. So are your next steps out of date? Is the stage inaccurate? Is there 1 to 2 contact roles listed on the op? If you're in a medic protocol, do you have the right people? So economic buyer, internal champion, etc. And I try to incentivize it by publishing it. So leaderboards, so who has the most clean data, and if there's inaccuracies, if someone has like a lot of data hygiene issues, then I'll make sure to sit with them and do that hand holding, just like to clean it up, take an hour out of your day to clean up the data, and I'll instruct them how to do that. So yeah, another way I handle it is automation.
Can you maybe share some automation practices you're doing?
Yeah, so if there's a contact, so I've definitely used sales activity trackers. So if there's a email sync, I think Gong has it. So I've been using that in the past to capture activity and such. Other automation tools I've used, like workflow automation in the system, so automatic field updates. And yeah, just making sure that all of the systems talk to each other and are well integrated, making sure that the user interface is clean and easy to use. Those are things that I do to make sure the data hygiene is good and we have all our information in one place.
Let's take a step higher, like a more high-level questions about RevOps, which is, what are the trends that you see now in RevOps that you think are going to change the role in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. So, you know, coming from a sales analytics background, there were a lot of reports and things that I had to build out manually from scratch that were very time consuming to build from a database perspective. So that's like time series analysis, week over week changes, pipeline snapshotting, and like coverage rates and things like that. Now there's a lot of tools out there that automate out the build. They just have the reports that I need out of the box. So that's really exciting. Like, I don't have to spend my time building out these very tedious reports. It could take months to build out something like that, especially like pipeline snapshotting. You know, I have to build the framework in the database to do so. So that's great. And I can spend most of my time being consultative on the analytics rather than building them and tweaking them, etc. So these things just plug right into Salesforce, which is super exciting. The other is like the volume of tools that there are. Like, I've been in the game for a while, and I've been doing a lot of things from scratch. And now like a lot of the tools out there really automate a lot of the processes that I was doing. And so I can really be more strategic in the role. There's also like so many more resources popping up and communities and knowledge sharing. So I'm tapped into a lot of these kind of revenue operations communities, and they really represent, to me, a forum to express new ideas and ask for advice. Because, you know, revenue operations is a somewhat new field. And there hasn't been historically the thought leadership that maybe we needed to streamline innovation in the field. And I think that's really starting to develop, which is super exciting.
Can you recommend some of these communities for people that want to educate themselves?
Yeah, so I'm involved with the Revenue Operations Alliance, which is tied to the Sales Enablement Collective, also the RevOps Co-op. And, you know, some of the companies that provide services to sales operations communities, like Salesforce or Lean Data, they have groups. So like the Trailhead and Trailblazer community, as well as OpStars at Lean Data. And then Wizard of Ops is another Slack group that I would really recommend.
Cool. And one last question is, how do you like your coffee?
So I a real big coffee fan. I love coffee. I am an addict, actually. So I guess there's a fine line between enthusiast and addict. I'm more of the addict side, because if I don't have it, I get really cranky. So I take it black most mornings, but if I get an afternoon pick me up, I'll do an almond cappuccino.
Cool. So thanks a lot for sharing with us all these best practices of revenue operations, and it looks like you had quite a career, and I'm sure you have a lot ahead of you. And I'm sure that our audience would appreciate everything you've shared.
Awesome. Thank you so much.